Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 5:06. It's Thursday morning. Thanks for joining us on this 14th day of November. A big developing day yesterday in the transition movement for the Trump administration. We'll get you up to speed on everything that happened. Maybe some of it happened while you were asleep. Also coming up at 6:35, Toomey Harding. She's running in that special election for state senate in Virginia. 7:05. You wonder what was discussed between Donald Trump and Joe Biden in their meeting at the Oval Office yesterday? Yes, so do I. Well, the reporter who has the exclusive directly from President Trump will be joining us at 7:05, Diana Glebova of the New York Post. At 7:35, our pal and colleague from ESPN 630, Andy Pollin, to give us a preview of tonight's Thursday night Commanders game. 8:05, KT McFarland, and 8:35, Susan Crabtree. Talk about insiders and sources. She has some insight into who may be taking over at the Secret Service. That would be Susan Crabtree. I'm Larry O'Connor alongside a Thursday appearance by Patrice Onwuka. Good morning, Patrice.
Hey, good morning, Larry. It's good to be back with you.
Thanks for carrying the torch there, by the way, on Friday when I was out of town. You and Hans sounded great.
Ah, thanks. Yeah, it was fun to be on with Hans.
Repping things up. Well, wait, why'd you say it like that? It was
Hans
fun to be on.
Vakovsky.
It was fun to be on with Hans. Oh, I see. So
I only made one joke about you.
It's not fun to be on with me. Is that what you're saying? You know what?
Of course, Larry.
I have a fragile ego, and I get a little jealous when there are other men
Larry.
in the studio with you, Patrice.
Oh, Larry, you are the host. You're my mentor.
Oh.
Of course I missed you.
Thank you.
But it was fun to be on with Hans. He's great.
And I'm obviously being ridiculous. So yesterday we had another round of appointments and announcements. And by the way, I've been mentioning that, this Marco Rubio thing for Secretary of State, it had gone on for quite some time, unlike the other patterns. It had been leaked and then not confirmed within 24 hours by Mar-a-Lago. But it was, in fact, confirmed yesterday afternoon that Senator Marco Rubio of Florida will, in fact, be the nominee and one presumes the confirmed Secretary of State at the beginning of the Trump administration. Also announced yesterday, former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii will be the Director of National Intelligence. There's some sweet justice there, considering when she ran for the Democrat nomination in 2020, the intelligence community leaked out various sort of rumors and whispers. This is what they do. That she was in some way in league with Vladimir Putin and that she was a Russian operative. You remember Hillary Clinton even said that on the Pod Save America podcast, that she was in some way a Russian operative. This is something, frankly, that moved her even further over to the conservative side of the political spectrum and to the Republican Party and the embrace of Donald Trump and many America Firsters who were more than ready to have an ally who had just been maligned by, imagine being a active duty member of the military as well as a sitting congresswoman, and then finding out that your own government, through its intelligence community, has been putting out whisper campaigns saying that you were an agent for a foreign country. That's absolutely, and she is angry about it. I've talked to her personally about it, and she is still very angry about it. And boy, people are freaking out that she's now going to be the Director of National Intelligence because that appointment, along with some of these other ones that we'll get to, very much send the signal that people who have been wronged by this system are now going to be able to go in and, well, frankly, find out who wronged them. And many of us have been waiting for that, Patrice. It's one thing for that's terrible that they did that. It's terrible that they did that. No one's ever paid a price. And we've never actually had names about, okay, well, who did that? Who did this? Who did this? And now it appears, at least from the intelligence community perspective, that Tulsi Gabbard might be in a position to answer those questions.
Well, so you're talking about accountability, which is very good. And then there's also the disrupting the system to remake it and refill it with people who should be there rather than people who are abusing their federal government power. Yeah. I think it's exciting. I think that that's a trend that we're seeing with all of these different nominations, including some that you'll get to in a moment. Yes. But in 2016, President Trump ran on draining the swamp. And it was hard to understand just how deep that swamp is and what type of strategy that you can employ to do it. Now we're seeing.
Yeah, I'll say. Senator Mike Lee, a Republican of Utah, took to X and put out a congratulations notification to Tulsi Gabbard and then said Tulsi, give me a call sometime. We have some illegal domestic spying programs we can end. Which, again, it's like, James Clapper. Let's just put this in perspective as people are like, I cannot believe Tulsi Gabbard is not experienced to do this. James Clapper, who apparently was, perfectly experienced to be the director of national intelligence, lied under oath before a Senate committee when specifically asked and confronted about domestic spying programs. It was a lie. We know it was a lie. Everybody knows it was a lie. It was under oath. It was revealed that there were domestic spying programs. Barack Obama himself, patted himself on the back by ending the domestic spying programs that we were told never existed in the first place. James Clapper not only was never punished and held accountable, as you say, for that lie under oath for covering up something as serious as a domestic spying operation against American citizens, he was rewarded and lauded. And now he's the guy that CNN turns to say, well, tell us, since you used to be the director of national intelligence, what do you think of Tulsi Gabbard? He's now an expert to tell us all who should have that job when he oversaw domestic spying and then lied about it under oath. And don't even get me started about beginning the surveillance of the Trump campaign during Crossfire Hurricane that James Clapper was a part of, instigated with John Brennan, the former CIA director, and yes, has lied about it consistently. So he's supposed to be held up as some paragon of virtue and the epitome of the appropriate type of director of national intelligence. And Tulsi Gabbard apparently is not qualified for the job. Give me a break.
Well, listen, President Trump they've described him as not fit for the job, not doesn't have the credentials, doesn't have the background that's necessary to lead the nation. And I think he's going back to a model that I think historically has been important in the United States, which is that career politicians need not apply. Sometimes for these positions, you need people who have not been in the system, who are not infected with a disease that causes people, these insiders to cover up the crimes or the crimes of their higher ups.
Exactly.
So you need somebody who can come with fresh ideas, who's not afraid of anyone, of disrupting their friend circles and their drinking buddies.
Yes.
And then be able to say, no, you're out, and we're changing the system.
In fact, I have a great example of what you just described. In 1960, John F. Kennedy Jr., a hero of Democrats and the left, appointed as Attorney General a young man, 35 years old, who had never served in public office, had never really tried a case in open court. His main experience was serving as a counsel to a couple of committees in the House and the Senate, including the infamous Senator McCarthy's committee that went after communists in the government. And he didn't have nearly the kind of experience that someone would normally have to be the Attorney General. And by the way, that appointee, the Attorney General under John F. Kennedy, is held up today as a hero of the Democratic Party. I'm speaking, of course, of John F. Kennedy's younger brother, Robert F. Kennedy. His only qualifications that made him appropriate to be Attorney General was the fact that his last name was Kennedy. But John Kennedy wanted him as Attorney General. He was brought in as an Attorney General, and I think many people would say that he had a pretty effective tenure going after the mob and various other efforts that he spearheaded as the Attorney General. But you know what? That doesn't even matter. The fact is the president should be able, if they want to disrupt things and they want to bring somebody in with fresh ideas and not beholden to the system, the president should be able to do that. Which brings us to Donald Trump's choice for Attorney General.
Uh-huh.
Congressman Matt Gaetz of Florida.
Okay.
Let's explore that appointment in just a moment. First, though, it's 5:15.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live
From the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Rachel Levine, as the Assistant Deputy Secretary of Health and Human Services, a person who is actually medically confused about his own gender. Pete Buttigieg, the Secretary of Transportation, whose complete experience for that job was that he was the mayor of a small town in Indiana and liked riding on trains. Let's not also forget the bald-headed cross-dresser who was the deputy in the Department of Energy under Joe Biden. And, of course, Karine Jean-Pierre, the eminently qualified press secretary for the Biden White House. For Democrats to step up and say, well, these people are not qualified, they're not serious appointees for these jobs, just laugh in their face and remind them of who we've been dealing with for the last 4 years. Not to mention the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris. The idea that, for instance, Pete Hegseth is not capable of being Secretary of Defense, but we literally have a incapacitated person as the Commander-in-Chief right now. And that Tim Walz and Kamala Harris were appropriate to be the Commander-in-Chief, let alone Secretary of Defense. It's outrageous that none of these appointments.
Let's not forget too what these folks are doing in office. Lloyd Austin decided to leave his post, not tell the President of the United States, while he was undergoing major surgeries that put him literally out of commission for weeks on end. Never had a good response, and was like, "Oh, just suck it up. I did what I needed to do for my health, and I told who I needed to tell." And it turned out it wasn't anyone. So if these are the adults that have the pedigree and the background that are fit for office, I will take a disruptor. Let's see what a disruptor can do.
Well, if you want a disruptor, you just got one, because late yesterday afternoon, Representative Matt Gaetz of Florida was named as the designated appointee to head up the Justice Department. And boy, oh boy, are people going nuts about that one. He, first of all, has more credentials and more experience as a practicing attorney and in the federal government as an elected official than the aforementioned Robert F. Kennedy Jr. did in 1960. So set aside your concerns about his experience. You may not like his level of experience. Listen, I recognize that some people think that you needed to have somebody who had worked in the Justice Department in the past or who had interacted with the Justice Department at a higher level. For instance, Matt Whitaker, a former U.S. attorney and had served as Deputy Attorney General. I get that. But many people believe that the Justice Department needs a complete and total shakedown, a wringing out, if you will, sort of, a look under every rug and open up every closet to find out what's still hiding in there. And I don't think you're going to get that from somebody who has, in fact, worked on the inside. Matt Gaetz, here's what I can tell you about Matt Gaetz. The FBI leaked to the press that Matt Gaetz was being investigated for trafficking an underage girl across state lines for sexual purposes.
Highly salacious.
Incredibly salacious, that the FBI leaked was being investigated, that turned into an ethics investigation into Matt Gaetz in the House of Representatives. The charges have been dropped, by the way. In fact, I don't think any charges were ever even brought against Matt Gaetz, to tell you the truth. Matt Gaetz believes that he was unjustly, publicly outed by the FBI in this investigation without any evidence. And if that is true, if it is true that the FBI had no real evidence to investigate Matt Gaetz, but instigated that investigation and then leaked it to the press for the obvious sole purpose of sliming and slandering Matt Gaetz, then he being appointed as the Attorney General is actually the perfect remedy for everything that's wrong and everything that we've seen transpire over at the FBI. And if there are people at the FBI who aren't part of that kind of political operation that we've seen the FBI engaged in, then guess what? That's great news. That means you have nothing to worry about. But if there are people who are using the Justice Department for political purposes, and I think that their behavior under Merrick Garland, going after Catholics for going to the Latin Mass, going after parents who go to a school board meeting, coordinating with local district attorneys in Georgia and in New York to politically prosecute and persecute Donald Trump so that he would be intimidated from running for office. That all happened under the eminently experienced and qualified and popular Merrick Garland, who got a lot of Republicans to vote for him during his confirmation hearing. Since all that happened under Merrick Garland, maybe Matt Gaetz is a good guy to disrupt things over there.
Well, so what's interesting, I'm looking at some of the different conservative circles to see how people are talking about Matt Gaetz's nomination. Wall Street Journal, I'll start there, the editorial board, their headline is Matt Gaetz is a bad choice for Attorney General, and they go on to talk about why his judgment, he would undermine confidence in the law and his judgment would be questionable. So there would not be a return of confidence to the Justice Department under his tenure. National Review, not surprisingly, he dares to send Trump dares the Senate to vote down Matt Gaetz, and they talk about maybe there's more political motivations behind that, where by Republicans voting against Matt Gaetz, it would turn him into a martyr in the MAGA world, and then kind of set him up to be able to run for a higher office in the state of Florida.
Well, yes.
Perhaps a vacated gubernatorial seat. I don't know about a Senate seat.
Well,
for
see,
Marco
no,
Rubio's
a lot
Senate
of
seat,
people,
but there's
people are
intrigue
talking
here.
about it. Yeah, there are, and we'll listen. We'll have much more to say about this as the morning develops. But I'll leave you with this. Part of the deal for him to be Attorney General is he had to resign his seat in the House of Representatives. So he's gone.
Yes.
He will be replaced. Governor DeSantis, I think, called for special elections. There's a lot of Floridians now who are going to be part of this administration. You've got a Senate seat open and 2 House seat opens from Mike Waltz and from Matt Gaetz. He had to resign his seat, which, by the way, I mean, if you're Mike Johnson, possibly facing another revolt amongst the conservative caucus for Speaker.
You're kind of like going...
You're like, okay, that's fine, right?
You wipe the sweat off my brow.
And then if he does not get confirmed by the Senate, what happens to Matt Gaetz? Some people are saying, well, then DeSantis could appoint Matt Gaetz to replace Marco Rubio. So the Senate, as they're confirming Matt Gaetz, right, it's like, okay, do we want to confirm him as Attorney General or do we want to have him as a colleague in the Senate? It's all fascinating to watch. And we get a front row seat, and we've popped our popcorn, and I hope you're enjoying the show, too. It's 5:24.
Now,
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 5:36. Busy days right now as we continue to plow through the news cycle and try to give you as much context as possible. Joining us at 6:35, Tumai Harding, running in that special election out in Loudoun County for State Senate. 7:05, Diana Glebova, New York Post reporter. She has the scoop on what was discussed between Biden and Trump in that remarkable Oval Office meeting. 7:35, Andy Pullen from ESPN 630 to preview tonight's Commanders game. 8:05, KT McFarland, and at 8:35, Susan Crabtree, Real Clear Politics. Got scoops of her own on the Secret Service. She also just won last night the Dow Prize for Investigative Journalism for her incredible coverage of the Secret Service and the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. Yes, it is wonderful. That wonderful voice you hear is from the wonderful Patrice Onwuka, who is with us this wonderful Thursday morning. Good morning, Patrice.
Good morning, Larry. Good morning, everybody.
Oh, where to begin? We just spent a little bit of time on these appointments that the president-elect has announced for his cabinet that is really shaping up now and forming. I jokingly texted to our loving colleague Julie Gunlock yesterday. I texted her, Hannity for HUD with an exclamation point. And she called me and she said, "Are you serious? Has that been announced?" And I said, well, I was joking, but the fact that you thought I was serious tells you exactly where we are right now. Hannity for HUD.
It kind of does. It kind of does. I mean, it's so entertaining. You're on the edge of your seat wondering who's going to be appointed next. And I think it's driving the left mad, and it's really entertaining, frankly.
Well, I just want everyone to know I've been receiving a lot of text messages from friends and supporters and messages on Facebook. At this time, I have not been approached by anyone on the transition team for any position in the new Trump administration. Wait,
you're not going to be the press secretary, Larry? I mean, I could see you up there on the dais.
All I'm saying is, at this time, I have not been approached. That's all I will say. I will leave it at that. And I appreciate everyone's love and support. All right, yesterday...
Can I start a rumor mill?
I could not even get through it with a straight face. Yesterday in the United States Senate, as previewed here yesterday morning by Senator Ron Johnson, the vote was taken for the brand new majority leader position. Mitch McConnell, of course, stepping down as the leader of the Republicans in the Senate after a record-breaking, decades-long tenure. He was to be replaced by one of 3 senators, either Rick Scott of Florida, John Thune of South Dakota, or John Cornyn of Texas. Mr. Scott was not able to make it through the first ballot. It came down to Cornyn and Thune, and John Thune of South Dakota emerged triumphant. He will be the new majority leader for the Republican Party. He's a very tall man, by the way.
He is.
He
towers over
them. He's a very large fellow.
Colleagues.
Yes. Afterwards, he met with reporters in the corridor of the Capitol.
And this Republican team is united. We are on one team. We are excited to reclaim the majority and to get to work with our colleagues in the House to enact President Trump's agenda. We have a mandate from the American people, a mandate not only to clean up the mess left by the Biden-Harris-Schumer agenda, but also to deliver on President Trump's priorities. We will make sure that the president and his team have the tools and the support that they need to enforce border security laws and to remove the violent criminals who are wreaking havoc in every one of our states.
Now, of course, Patrice, the very first item on the agenda for this newly formed Senate come the first week of January will be to confirm as quickly as possible President Trump's appointees for his cabinet. He was asked specifically about that. This, by the way, was before Matt Gaetz was announced for the Attorney General spot.
Yes.
And Thune responded enthusiastically.
As you know, the Senate has a advise and consent role under the Constitution, so we will do everything we can to process his noms quickly, get them installed in their position so they can begin to implement his agenda.
There you go. It doesn't get clearer than that. The question is, will John Thune have what it takes to push back against the obvious shenanigans that will be imposed by Chuck Schumer and the Democrats now in the minority? Because, of course, in the Senate, Patrice, there's a lot you can do to disrupt the status quo when you're in the minority. He knows that. John Thune, if say what you will about him, he is very familiar with the operations of the Senate. He knows how things go down in that chamber. Will he be strong enough to push back when Schumer obviously becomes a roadblock to progress, a roadblock to all of those nominations being processed quickly? We'll see.
So Senator Thune has been in Congress for over 30 years. He knows the ins and outs. And I think he's been interesting, a character who's kind of kept his head down for the most part, never cast his own tall shadow over Senator McConnell, which is interesting. But what remains to be seen is not how much he's willing to go up against Democrats, but will he go up against President Trump? I mean, in the past, we've seen Senator Thune speak out against President Trump in 2016 when President Trump was running for office the first time, and the Access Hollywood tapes came out. He kind of took him to task then. In January 6th, he condemned President Trump's conduct. Even recently, he's kind of questioned President Trump's use of or proposal to use tariffs as a negotiating tool. And so, I think it's going to be interesting to see how much of the MAGA America First agenda he's willing to stick his neck out for. Does that mean that he's going to be, the art? I know he's going to be fine on tax cuts, which is a very big and important agenda item. But what about some of the more contentious issues that will arise?
Yeah.
And then let's also not forget that you still have a couple of Republicans who in the Senate who like to caucus with Democrats on some of the very contentious stuff. So can he keep those folks, those ladies in line, or is he going to try to straddle the fence the way we saw McConnell do?
Yeah.
We'll see.
Good question, and all those we'll have to see. For his part, Donald Trump did put out a statement saying congratulations to Senator John Thune, the newly elected Senate Majority Leader. He moves quickly and will do an outstanding job. I look forward to working with him and Senators John Barrasso, the new Senate Majority Whip, Tom Cotton, Senate Republican Conference Chairman, Shelley Moore Capito, Senate Republican Policy Committee Chairman, James Lankford, Republican Conference Vice Chairman, who, by the way, you'll remember that name, Senator Lankford of Oklahoma, who spearheaded the ill-fated and ill-advised immigration border bill with Democrats.
Bipartisan immigration bill
that exactly.
Kamala Harris touted on the campaign trail.
Which Mitch McConnell gave approval enthusiastically behind the scenes to, but never made it to the floor. How Senator Lankford can continue unabated as part of the leadership team is part of the problem, I think. You'd pay no price for something like this, I suppose. And finally, he said, and Tim Scott, who is now the National Republican Senatorial Committee Chairman, Donald Trump says, we look forward to working with them to make America great again. Tim Scott's appointment in that position is actually very interesting. He will now be the point person on building on this slim majority in the Senate for the next midterms. It's a tall order because midterms after a president is elected by the political party is always a challenge and an uphill fight.
Absolutely.
But Tim Scott knows his way around. He can raise money, and we'll see. He'll begin recruiting candidates now, basically, for those seats that will be up for grabs. It is 5:45. Pete Hegseth, the nominee for Secretary of Defense. We talked about his record in the military as a combat veteran, Bronze Star recognized twice their combat veteran, his tours in Iraq, Afghanistan, Gitmo, of course, his time advocating for veterans. We left something out, Patrice, and it's a little awkward for me. But
what did we leave out?
Apparently, he's super hot.
You mean? I mean, he's good looking. His face and his hair. He's got really good facial features.
I'll be honest with you. It's never really been something that I've noticed. It's that he's not my type. Let's just say. But there's a photograph of him after running a marathon, I think, with an American flag on behalf of the 9/11 victims. He's actually at the 9/11 Memorial at Ground Zero carrying that flag, and he's wearing nothing but a tight pair of shorts. And I'll be honest, it looks like really good gay porn.
Well, you can tell he spends time in the gym. You can tell he spends time in the gym. I will put it that way. Folks can check it out online. I mean, listen, being in good shape, I think our Secretary of Defense, why not be somebody that should model for incoming recruits what the American military should look like?
As you know, I have many connections with the Navy and Marines now through my association with the Naval Academy and sponsoring midshipmen of all stripes. And I'm not naming names, but I can tell you that there were many people that I know who are currently active duty in the Navy and Marines who were texting me yesterday saying, well, it's nice to see somebody at the Pentagon who can actually pass the PRT. Because the fact is there have been quite a few in leadership roles who have let themselves go over the years. And Hegseth still, well, here's the thing. You know, when you're attractive and you look good and you've got a good fit body, that can be disarming to some of your critics, some of your opposition. In fact, take a listen to what they're saying on MSNBC, of all places.
That hasn't come up yet that concerns me in terms of his policies is that if he's not a Christian nationalist, he's one of their best warriors. I mean, he sees the military at this point as a flaming sword for Christ. One of the other things that he sort of pushes on outside of misogyny and DEI is anti-Muslim bigotry. Part of the appeal to Trump to him is how he looks. I watched 650 Trump rallies. In very few of them, and almost all of them, did he talk about one or two men in the audience that were big, beautiful, and muscular. And what he sees in Hegseth is sort of an alpha man and is like an essential casting, an ideal character. And Hegseth knows that and leans into that role. And so a part of what he's going to be designed to do is to sell what Trump's vision, what Trump is doing to the very audience that just elected Trump, that's hopped up on the Russian misinformation and other misinformation that they are sort of being pickled in there. And he's going to be their sort of public figure for that. So that, to me, is the times that he could actually be, on the surface, a very effective sort of vanguard for the scariest of Trump's policies.
So when Kamala Harris is to say, we're not going back, Pete Hegseth is the person who's going to roll back every single thing. He's going to take away abortion rights in the military. He's going to remove equality for women. He's going to implement a trans ban. He's going to take out the senior leadership that aren't loyal. The Pentagon is going to be the beachhead for everything that Trump wants to do to change our country. And Pete Hegseth is going to be the general in the front line, carrying the flag, covered in the tattoos, and carrying the message.
They can't stop talking about
they love that photo of him with the
body.
tattoos carrying the flag. Listen, they're just worried that people, that this is the definition of masculinity that Americans really like and want to see more of.
No, they prefer the
not
drag queens
Rachel
in
Levine.
The military.
Sorry, that is not, it is not Tim Walz. That is not a redefinition of a man. No.
Yeah.
Listen, I will just put it out there. My husband is a hunky hunk. And so it is nice to see a leader of our military who is a hunk as well.
Your husband is a hunky hunk?
Yes, he is.
That's amazing.
He is. If you've
what?
ever come to my neighborhood and seen him in the yard,
I have met him.
Know.
No, it's true. And it's a great coincidence because my wife's husband is also a hunky hunk. Let's check in on Lawrence O'Donnell's analysis of Pete Hegseth, shall we?
Did you ever think that maybe there's more to life than being really, really, really ridiculously good looking?
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't think that was Lawrence O'Donnell, but the point is taken. It's 5:54.